Welcome back to another episode of Key Factors Podcast. I'm your host, Mark Jones, and we are powered by ReviewMyMortgage.com, the largest index of mortgage programs in the nation. And today we're actually going to have a guest that I believe is a pretty solid expert in real estate. He runs a very productive team and is a top producer himself. I want to introduce our guest, Rich Valadez. Rich, how you doing, brother?
Good. Rich Valadez.
Valadez.
2 A's. The joke was always we got A's in school, so they gave us an extra A.
That's awesome.
So Valadez.
That's pretty clever. And another way of also marketing, I would imagine, that you can maybe deploy if you haven't already.
Yeah. At an early age, it taught us to advocate for ourselves. So.
Love it. I love it. So, Rich, tell us about yourself. The audience out there know that I bring experts to the podcast, but give us your background. Where'd you come from? How much experience in real estate? That kind of stuff.
Sure. So I'll foreshadow by saying I accidentally became a realtor.
Okay. And stumbled into it,
which I'm sure a lot of people do. But my background is primarily in leadership, talent management. So I led a talent development team, talent acquisition team at Rackspace for about 12 years.
Okay.
I actually started in sales because, circa 2005, I just graduated from UTSA and I got a job at Wells Fargo. And I thought, wow.
What were you doing at Wells Fargo?
I was doing loans.
Okay. Loans. Gotcha. Yeah. So you were in the call center probably at The Rock or something like that?
So it was Wells Fargo Financial.
Okay,
so
gotcha.
There were little retail offices similar to like this in shopping malls. And we predominantly focus on refinancing.
Okay.
So we would help people restructure their debt.
Gotcha.
To get out of it. And to be honest, I wasn't very good at it because logic would always, come to the forefront. And I was like, I don't feel good about you taking a free and clear house and stacking all this unsecured debt on it. Yes, it's going to improve your monthly cash flow by $2,000, but there's nothing preventing you from opening up those credit cards again.
I agree.
And so I always struggled with the morality of it and the logic of it.
Sure.
And so I would only really do loans that made sense. And I felt good about the person actually doing them and committing to what they said they were going to do. So I quickly transitioned into banking.
Okay.
Proper banking, but I did that for about a year. And so I closed loans. That's how I kind of cut my teeth in the mortgage side. So I understand it pretty well.
Very cool. Yeah.
But at that time, I remember.
And I knew about the Rackspace stuff. I don't think we had ever discussed that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So Rackspace had reached out to me and like, hey, we want to interview you for a sales job. And I'm like, I'm working loans at Wells Fargo. What is Rackspace? No, thanks. So I passed. That was in 2005. And then I was doing my MBA at St. Mary's. And my last class that I almost didn't attend because I was done with the class, we had a guest speaker. And the guest speaker just happened to be Graham Weston.
Okay.
And there was a few Rackers, is what they call Rackspace employees.
Rackers.
In that class. And they were always talking very positively about Rackspace. But I remember Graham is a great person, great speaker. But my takeaway was, damn, this dude's really excited to go to work.
Yeah.
Right? Because most people are like, work sucks. It's a grind. Hate being there. But he was excited to be there. The people in my class were excited to be there. So I was like, I need to get in there.
That's contagious.
Like I passed on it 2 years ago. And here they've grown exponentially.
Yeah.
I need to get in there. So, being a cocky MBA grad, I was applying for all these big roles.
And at the time, it probably was cocky, not confident just yet.
Oh, right? 100%. Disillusion is what it is. And I think a lot of people need to make that realization sooner rather than later.
Yeah, you were basically getting high on your own supply at that point.
So I was like, marketing manager, this, that, and of course, hey, you don't have any experience. How are we going to hire you into this? And the irony is I ended up leading TA my last gig there. And obviously that makes sense to me. So I was like, oh shoot, what can I do? What can I do to get my foot in the door and just prove that I can be the best, right? Or the best at, for the role for myself, right? Not really competing against everybody else, but just to show that I was really good at what I was hired for.
Gotcha.
And so I kind of looked around at what was available on the site, and there was a monetary component to it. I was like, well, where can I make the most money leveraging my skills? And I was like, well, I don't really want to do it, but I'll sell because I know how to do that. So I got hired as a BDC, business development consultant.
Okay.
which at the time I felt pretty good because most people were getting hired on the Q team, the qualification team, or BDA, business development assistant.
Okay.
And so I got hired in a couple.
Now, was that more of an operations, the other side of thing versus the sales?
No, it was sales, but it was like lead gen.
Gotcha. Very good.
Right. Nurturing.
Yep.
Right. Then handing it off either to the salesperson on the new sell side or the install base to the BDC.
Makes sense.
So I got hired right into it. I felt pretty good about it. And the interview process was funny. It was a startup back then. I won't get too much into it, but it was an interesting experience to say the least. And I remember talking to my wife saying, hey, they offered me the job. Should I take it? And she's like, no, that's less money. It is commission, but you're in a better spot now. And I was like, man, this looks like a rocket ship. Like,
right.
Oh, screw it. I'm gonna take the risk and go for it. And so I did. And, I made a lot more money that first year than I was at Wells Fargo, but the culture and the environment was amazing. And
talk about that. And the reason why I want you to elaborate a little bit on that is I can tell that it's more than likely a culture that is contagious, motivating, competition, those types of things. And I just had a meeting this morning with my loan officers kind of talking about the same premise in rebuilding. Since COVID took place, everybody has dispersed, and the camaraderie, the competition, that level of accountability has been lost a little bit. But when we talk these days about going back to the basics, that's one of those basics that tend to exuberate more out of somebody that would not otherwise do that.
Yeah. So it starts with the primary focus, and especially back then, was helping the customer.
Mm-hmm.
Right? What do we got to do? We were able to make servers sexy, right?
Yeah.
Just stacks. There wasn't even cloud back then.
Right.
It was just literally servers in racks. That's why it's called rack space, because you would rent rack space from us. But the difference that we did and the way we differentiated from the competition is we offered a level of support. Because back then, things are so abstracted now, you don't really have to know how to do the nuts and bolts of it. But, but back then, you needed somebody, because your alternative was a co-location facility where you had somebody running out there with hard drives when they failed and swapping them out. And that could lead to downtime, which costs you money. And so we figured out, well, we're nerds, we're geeks, we love this stuff. Why don't you pay us a premium and we'll solve that headache for you?
Gotcha.
And the goal was always rallying around that customer's business for uptime, right? We wanted 4 nines. We wanted to be up all the time.
Right.
And people valued that in the market.
Absolutely.
All right. And so they put together this amazing support structure, both on the data center side, the customer service side, and the sales side. And what was magical back then is we were all in one location. Okay. And so, I just finished a gig with another startup that was distributed, and the sales leader there wanted more people in the office together.
Okay.
And I'm an advocate of that. I think some roles it makes sense, some roles it doesn't.
Yeah.
When you're rallying around a customer, the ability to stand up and let's say I'm sales, or let's say I'm an admin and you're an account manager, I can stand up and say, hey, Mark, I'm working on iThink's account right now. Can you ping the server and see what you're getting? That collaboration
absolutely
really defines how you fanatically support a customer. It's everybody in all at once. Now, there's lots of tools and technology available today. You fast forward almost 20 years, it's a lot easier to do distributed, but I still think there's a value to getting customer-facing roles together who have that ability to just jump up in the moment, interact, because then there are cultural outcomes of that.
Sure.
You're playing darts, you're playing basketball, you're playing cornhole or whatever.
Yeah.
And you get to bond a little bit.
Absolutely.
And so, when things are tough, you're there for each other, and it's a genuine friendship. Like some of my best friends in the world came from there.
That's
right?
cool.
We're still there today. And that's, I would say, and Rackers, hold me accountable to this, that's true across the board, across the world, all of us who've been there. Some of the alum that have come from there are unbelievable. Lots of CEOs, lots of VPs, lots of business owners, startup guys, gals. It's pretty fantastic to say I wasn't alone.
Or part of it. Yeah, absolutely. That is pretty cool. So taking that, moving into real estate, you said you kind of stumbled into it. What was that like? How did you get into real estate? And from there, let's lead it into what made you decide to create a team.
Yep. So back when I was doing loans for Wells Fargo, Flip This House or whatever the shows were of that time were super popular.
Yeah.
And, me being 23, 24, my now wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, we're like, hey, let's figure out how to do this. And so we were trying to, I remember going with contractors, looking at houses to flip and just couldn't make it happen just because we didn't have the profile really to get loans and stuff, right? So we were stumbling. So I said, well, why don't we just buy a house, live in it, and then we can rent it out or flip it and then just keep building. And so in 2005, we bought our first house. Or 2006, we bought our first house. And we stayed there for 5 years. We went through the crash and all that. And I said, all right, let's go buy another house and we'll rent this one out. That's what we signed up to do. We got a little bump in the road with the crash.
Sure.
With the Great Recession.
And I'll come back to that to discuss some of those things because you brought up a point that I want to hone in on, but keep going.
So we bought the house and we decided to rent out our existing one. And this is where most, quote unquote, real estate investors go wrong.
Okay.
They don't do their homework. They don't have a plan. They don't have a system. They don't know how to screen.
Right.
Like money's made on real estate at acquisition, and successful rentals are made during the screening process.
Agree.
Right.
Wow. Yeah.
So if you don't,
in my opinion, those are two solid key factors for this episode in itself.
Yeah.
So yes, continue.
Yeah. So we didn't do the latter part with the tenants very well. Great people, but our numbers were off. Right. We were just barely breaking even. Didn't really manage to the lease. So it's just a pain in the butt.
Yeah.
So I said, let's sell this house and just be done with it. We also had, at that time, one daughter. And yeah, we'd sold it before we had our second one. So we had a new baby. And so, just didn't want that hassle.
Sure.
Sold it. And I was like, I'm done with real estate. It's a pain in the ass. Never going to do it again. Doing everything in the stock market. It's so much easier.
Now, let me ask you, did you lose any money?
No.
Okay. Good deal. Keep going.
I didn't.
Yeah.
Thankfully, right? Because you buy it at or you make money on acquisition. So we bought it at a good price.
Sure.
That allowed us to ride that appreciation. Hold periods matter.
Yeah.
So being in there for 5 years definitely helped.
Absolutely.
Even with that extreme volatility.
That's actually something that I wrote down here, which is the hold period. And this is a message to those of you that are considering purchasing real estate, currently have real estate, and worried about a potential crash. We've already debunked that in many instances, especially with appraisers. Matter of fact, check out the most recent street interviews where I actually interview an appraiser that couldn't prove me wrong. So the concept is, if you buy real estate, you only lose if you have to let it go before it brings its value back. And an example of that would be a veteran that purchases a home 100% finance. Well, if they sell in year 1, 2, 3, chances are they're not going to make any money, but they also went in it with the wrong premise in mind. And that is essentially, real estate will always go up. It's just, when is it going to go up and how long will it take to go up? So if you are in a situation to where you're thinking there's a crash and you really want to buy a house, but you're moving in the next, and know that you're going to be moving in the next 2 to 3 years, just know that the best thing you can do is hold and convert that property to a rental investment property. Therefore, having someone else pay your mortgage for you while you're doing the next one or moving on. So yeah, sorry about that. And it was a great point that you brought up. And a lot of people say, oh my gosh, I'm not going to make any money from this. Well, do you have to sell it?
Yeah.
No. Well, then why do you think you need to sell it then? Yeah. Well, I never really thought about it. Okay, great. Now let's have that conversation.
Yeah. And that applies to all investment vehicles.
Absolutely.
If you're doing that with your 401k or you're doing that with a mutual fund, you're going to lose money that way.
Very
true.
Trying
to time the market.
Yeah. Good luck, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So, you fast forward about 4 or 5 years, and a good friend of mine said, hey, have you heard of this thing called Lifestyles Unlimited? And I was like, dude, this sounds like a Ponzi scheme.
Oh, yeah.
Multi-level marketing.
Sounds
what are you
like it.
talking about? He's like, nah, man, there's a lot of rackers who are doing it. And actually, some of the big dogs in syndicated multifamily deals came from Lifestyles Unlimited.
Okay.
They went and did that boot camp. So it is a good program. You got to be able to pick and choose what makes sense for you.
Sure.
But the core program of the systems, how to screen, what type of properties to look for, what kind of margins, like all that is solid. And so, for like $400 or $500, I got like a 2-year membership where I could go to unlimited boot camps.
Gotcha.
And basically learn how to systemize rentals.
Okay.
So, I did that. I was able to bring my dad for free. He ended up getting a couple properties off the back of it. You bring your spouse for free. You can go to as many as you want over that 2-year period. You get access to discounted appliances, all this stuff. So I went through that program, and, it was 2016, and my wife and I were like, all right, let's go for it again. And so we bought 3 at once. Boom. Jumped right in.
Okay.
And thankfully I was part of Rackspace, part of Tech Block, and it was the decade of downtown. So I was really in the know about where things were developing around downtown. So I targeted Denver Heights.
Okay.
Because Dignity had already really popped.
Absolutely, yeah.
But Denver Heights really hadn't. And people were like, you're crazy. Why are you going to Denver Heights? And I'm like, because it's awesome.
Yeah.
And it's really close to downtown. There's lots of, updating going on. There's some really beautiful homes there. And they're cheap.
Yeah.
Right?
That's true.
Relatively speaking, they were inexpensive. And so I think the first one we bought was like $60,000, $70,000. Bought a few, probably right around 100, maybe a little bit more.
Right.
One of them was pretty much turnkey.
Wow.
The other two, I had to put, some work into them, 50, 60 grand into one, and, probably 30 into the other.
And at that time, you hadn't yet transitioned to Realtor yet, right?
No, I was
still
full-time Rackspace.
Absolutely.
Full-time.
Good deal.
Yeah. Global role, traveling.
Right.
A lot.
Just doing the right things with money.
Correct.
I like that.
Like, how do I make it work for me?
Absolutely.
Right? How do I, and it'll get into kind of my philosophy around like revenue streams and how to be resistant to major or
recession.
macroeconomic, try to recession-proof yourself, right?
That's right.
So I said, let's go do this. And the great thing about it, I don't even remember what the interest rates were, right?
Doesn't matter.
They cash flowed.
There you go.
Right.
Yeah.
And they cash flowed on top of not only your principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, but your percentage for capital expenditures, your percentage for vacancy, your percentage for maintenance.
Repair. That's right.
So you throw all that on top of it. And then if you're still getting 8-12% cash on cash return, and sometimes back then you were getting 16, 17, it was nuts.
Yeah.
It's really hard to find now. But if you get that cash on cash return, okay, that's a deal, right? So you'll make money on this deal.
Correct.
That's why I'm saying that acquisition, that's where it matters. So the cash on cash return, basically, how much money did you put down to acquire the property? And then how much money are you going to make per year? So you take that, 5,000 divided by, whatever you put down, and that gives you a percentage return. So that's your cash on cash return. And so that was our main metric that we were targeting. And of course, we wanted something that was going to appreciate over time. So we knew with stuff that was going on around downtown, odds are that this area was going to appreciate.
Yep. Check.
So boom, we went and did that. And, learned a lot. You have to have a lot of cash on hand for the unknown.
Yeah, for the old shit moments.
Yeah.
That's what I call them. We're getting through it.
I didn't have a ton, but, I was able to float, if something major came up, which they did.
Sure.
AC was stolen when we were doing a renovation.
Oh, wow.
Stuff like that, right?
Wow.
So, you can't be too thin on your margins,
right? Because
then you're just going to set yourself up for failure. So thankfully, we got through it and had very successful rentals. We added a few more to the portfolio, converted one of those original long-term rentals into a short-term rental for a period of time in San Antonio, and it was okay. The management companies were in their infancy in this market back then, 2017. And I bet they're way better now.
Sure.
But it was just, let's just get a long-term tenant.
I don't want to mess with it.
Yeah, the rents are great in this area. So we switched it back, and we actually ended up buying a house in Port Aransas.
Okay.
That's our short-term rental.
Gotcha.
And that one's been great.
Smart.
That one's been fantastic. And so, we added a few. So I think at the height we had 5.
Okay.
Physical single-family homes.
Doors, so
Correct.
to speak. Yep.
But part of that lifestyles program is to become like this multifamily investor, but you got to pay to get in there to become an accredited investor, right?
And something like that, kind of like a Grant Cardone concept, to where you're now open to a pool of investors, a pool of opportunities, properties, cash flow if needed, but they take a percentage, all of those things.
And it was expensive. It was like 20 or 50 grand. I can't remember.
Yeah.
But I was like, that never made sense to me, right? Logic always kicks in for me, usually. And I'm like, why would I just give you $25,000 just to like hang out?
Right.
Just to have a seat at the table. Like, and to be fair, like it was because you had to be an accredited investor or sophisticated investor. And so I was like, well, I'm sure we qualify for that now. So I waited till we did, and then we started shifting everything into multifamily. And some of the big guys here locally were former rackers. So I felt confident in putting my money with these guys because I knew them. They're here locally, could go shake their hand in person.
That's right.
And they had really good systems, right? Repeatable, proven methods that worked. And so, I shifted to majority of my investments since then to syndicated multifamily investments where I'm just a limited partner.
Gotcha.
So there's risks, rewards to it. Definitely as an active managing partner, you'll make a little bit more, but you're managing it, right? So this is what's truly mailbox money. When people talk about that, single family homes are not mailbox money. It's a little bit of a job,
right?
All right, you got to deal with people. You got to, get your AC serviced every 2 months, every 6 months.
And I think that most first-time investors, they see that as the only current opportunity or only solution to starting. And it is not a bad way to start if you do the right thing, if you have cash flow. And if you don't have cash flow, know that this is not your real job. Continue to work at your real job to make more money that you can then pay more towards the principal of that note, thus shrinking your term, building your equity quicker, and then to a point that you go, okay, we've knocked off quite a bit in this loan. Now, what do we do? Do we pull some cash out to buy 2? Do we sell it to buy 3? What do we do now? And is it enough that it makes sense to do that?
Yep.
So I see it as like a stepping stone along the way to going, okay, now I've got the hang of this. Let's buy multifamily.
Yeah.
Let's turn this up a bit.
Yeah. And if you wanted to be the principal on a multifamily deal, there's classes now on how to do that. That's just not something I want to do.
Sure.
I don't even think I'd want to buy, duplexes or quadplexes anymore. That's just not something I want to spend my time on anymore. Because I figured out how to get revenue streams through real estate that require minimum of amount of time. So it's good for me. So I think I've done about 12 now, over like 1,400 doors.
Gotcha.
And when they turn over or when I sell a single family home, my strategy right now, just because the uncertain times, is I'm putting a ton in the stock market because it's been on sale for a while. To establish lines of credit. So that way, I'm the bank.
That's right.
And so whenever there's an opportunity that pops up,
you get to be the one that dictates.
Go grab it whenever I need it, right? I don't have to go through any kind of approval process. It's just there for me to use. And because of the way it's structured, it's still earning returns in the market.
Absolutely.
And so it's a very long play. I'm kind of getting antsy. Hey, I want to go buy a single family house, but I'm just not in a hurry.
Gotcha.
It allows me to then focus on my real estate team and building that revenue stream.
Sure.
But that's, before I get to the realtor part, like that was a bulk of my 2015 to 2019 was that journey right
Gotcha.
there. And in 2019, Rackspace was going through a lot of changes. And I had an opportunity to basically leave, on good terms. All my equity from all the years was vested.
Built up, yeah.
And my goal was to do that, retire from the corporate world and become a full-time real estate investor by 40.
Okay.
And so I was able to do it by 36.
I love it.
Right. And so the joke was that year, I was a trophy husband.
That's awesome.
My wife was, we kind of swapped back and forth. She went part-time and I think didn't work for a while I was full-time W-2 and she was helping run the real estate side of things. But then we swapped back in 2019 where she went full-time. Now as a real estate investor. That was a fun year.
That's fun.
That's
pretty
good
cool.
year. I took my kids to Six Flags probably 100 times. And we still go to this day. We still get season passes and we go a lot. But it was that summer where what am I going to do with them?
Yeah.
Right? They're little too. So how was that 4 years ago? So they were 9 and 7.
You get to relive your childhood through them vicariously and in person. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So I was we had acquired two properties that year, and so renovating them full guts, right? Sewer line, foundation, plumbing, electrical, everything, right? So that was a lot of fun. And then I started taking my real estate license coursework because I was like, well, if I'm going to be buying these, then I should do it myself. I had a really good friend, kind of still a mentor on the real estate side. He's a really good agent, really investor focused, but taught me a lot. Taught me, really how to look at the contract and how to structure an offer. And so he was very helpful. And I was like, you know what, let me go get my license so I can use it for personal use and, be a full-time investor. But that's 2019, right? So things are starting to rise.
Oh yeah.
And I remember we walked away from another deal, which is important as an investor. A lot of people, if it's your first time, I don't want to burn $1,500 earnest money or $2,500 earnest money. Like that's a drop in the bucket if you buy the wrong house.
Yeah.
And so we were on one east side, so off of Houston Street, past New Braunfels.
Okay.
Going towards AT&T.
Yeah, AT&T Center. Yeah, it's now Frost Center.
Oh, Frost Center. Yeah, thank you. And it was a really great house, and there's lots of development around it. So all the signs were there.
Okay.
But I showed up, or actually, we did the inspection, and I had my foundation guy go out there, and he called me, and he's like, "Hey, the tenants are here." And I'm like, "Tenants? It's vacant." He's like, "Well, there's people in the backyard. I'm not going to go in."
Oh, wow.
So I was like, "Okay." So I show up, and they're not so great people just hanging out.
Oh, wow.
And then I started looking at the other houses, and there was people who had basically went into this house that had been completely redone and were squatting.
Oh, no.
And I was like, oh, man. And the foundation guy told me, dude, they burn these houses down. Like they start fires to stay warm. Like this is dangerous.
Yeah.
So I was buying that one with a buddy of mine, partner of mine. And I said, dude, there's no outs unless we just drop our earnest money. I said, let's burn it. I like to take my kids to the job site. Right. I don't feel safe. I don't want them stealing stuff. I'd already gone through that.
Yeah.
So we bounced and we burned probably $1,500, $2,000 in earnest money, but it's probably one of the best decisions we did. It allowed us to then go focus on something else.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that echoes a message of cutting your losses before they become tragedies, essentially. And it takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of willpower to be able to do that. But at the same time, I'm also going to go as far as to say it takes experience to have gone through things like that to be able to know this one's not worth my time. This one's not worth the additional money. I'm going to cut my losses now.
Yep.
And I think that's tough for a lot of folks to come to terms with in everything, but especially real estate.
Yeah, especially if you're not a real estate professional and you're successful in other areas of life.
Absolutely.
Man, you don't want that L on that tally sheet.
That's right.
You only want W's.
That's right.
But sometimes you got to take the loss.
Yes.
And I've seen this now, and I'm like, well, the math just didn't add up. You paid too much at acquisition. The market's shifted. You're going to have to take that L and move on.
And I think at a certain point in your discovery, in your journey, it's not necessarily considered a loss. It's more so it's a cost of doing business.
Yeah. So the joke, I'm sure you've heard it, people, realtors, real estate investors, they'll go spend $2,000 for a weekend workshop. So, right, to learn something, right? So we just call it tuition.
There you go.
We just paid tuition. It's $1,500 of tuition. I learned something.
Yeah.
Moving on.
As a matter of fact, I've had a saying for quite some time. I'm somebody that, and I probably say this in every episode because I want people to know out there that it is possible. Somebody that went to college but never graduated. So my wife and I started flipping houses, things of that nature. And people would ask me, is it possible to start flipping houses with what I have? Is it a wise thing to do? And I would stop them and basically say, look, did you graduate from college? Most of them would say yes. Okay, how much did you pay for that? $40,000, $100,000, et cetera, et cetera. The concept with flipping a house is essentially doing your best to buy at the right price, put as little into it as possible to make it sellable, livable, habitable, safe, all that good stuff to turn a margin profit. But if you were to happen to, let's say, break even, or even let's say you lose 20 grand on that deal, the next question is, are you ready, willing, and able to turn around and do it again? Mm-hmm. People look at me like, well, you just lost 20 grand. Why the hell would you do it again? Well, you lost 20 grand because I'm sure there was a lesson throughout that. You just told me that you paid 100 grand for college, 20 grand for college, what have you. How much of that are you using? So if you take what you learned to take that $20,000 L and apply it to the next one, would you be better off? Well, yeah. Okay. Well, then that's the decision that you have to make each time is, am I going to take what I learned and continue?
Yep.
Try it again.
Yep. And it's a great point because I remember that exact conversation when we bought those 3 houses. My wife and I were probably putting down about 60 grand all in with the down payments, 20% as an investor. And, they were inexpensive homes, but closing costs. And we looked at each other and said, we never see this money again. Are we okay with that? And we were like, yeah, screw it. Let's go for it.
Absolutely. And I think that I'm going to go as far as to say as investing, especially for novice, is almost like gambling. You have to be willing to play with what you can lose. That's what you should only play with, in my opinion, especially when you're first starting. As you become seasoned, you'll learn leveraging and doubling down. You'll learn parlaying certain things. There's so many different methods of going about purchasing a home for investment properties. DSCRs, if it has cash flow, I'm only putting down payment, we're good to go. Those types of things. But in the beginning, you should only play with what you are able and can afford to lose. Yep. Great point.
Yeah. So it's been a fun journey, and it takes us into the realtor path where I'm taking my license courses, having a lot of fun, but really enjoying what I'm learning. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, man, I could be really good at this. I could really help out a lot of people, not just myself. So then I started taking brokerages a little more serious, and I was like, all right, let me go look at a few out there. And, JB Goodwin just kept popping up, with all their great reviews.
Yeah.
And so I went and, had the honor of really being hired by Reagan Greer, who cool. Sadly passed away right after I started at the end of 2019. But, his enthusiasm was infectious. Like, you could tell he was really about just the mission of helping people, which is our mission. And I was like, man, this guy is great. Scott Peck was still there. He recruited me and helped me through that process.
Good deal.
Same thing. I'm always so excited to see him. He's always such a good mood, just genuine, thoughtful. JB, I tell people he's a real person.
Yeah.
He takes us to lunch occasionally, one-on-one, not like big ones. He's in the office quite a bit, shares great wisdom with all his years of learning. And so I decided, and ironically, I didn't really spend a lot of time with Alberto or Aaron during my recruiting process.
That's funny. Aaron, I just ran into, she lives in the same neighborhood as I, and we were leaving the neighborhood, but she had her windows rolled up, and we were at the stop sign, and I looked at the vehicle, and I was just like, what the heck is that vehicle? So I rolled the window down. I'm like, hey, real quick, 2 seconds. Like, I don't even know who you are. The windows rolled up, couldn't tell. She rolls her window down, and it's Aaron. I'm like, hey, girl, what the heck is that? And it was the new BMW electric.
Yeah.
Those things look cool.
Yeah, it looked like it's just going to fly, right?
Oh my God. I thought it was just going to take away. It was cool.
But, those two have been, some of the greatest additions to my life, like Alberto and Aaron. And the irony is I didn't really spend a lot of time with them I think Aaron was traveling, but during my recruiting process. And, they've just been blessings to have them both, as part of the team and being part of such an amazing organization for, going on over 4 years now. But, I decided at that point, all right, I'm going to make this like a second career, semi-career, right? Because what I also tell people about, life and stuff, and we'll get into kind of, my view on challenging the norms, it really isn't about how much money you make. It's about how much time it takes you to make that money and how much of that money you actually get to keep.
That's right.
Because, I had a huge job, made a lot of money, global title, but taxes were becoming a pain in the butt.
That's right.
And in the amount of time it took me to earn that money, when you're a senior director, in a global organization, you're working 60, 70 hours a week.
Right.
And I loved it. I love to work. But,
well, that's the only way you can get to that level is if you love what you do.
But in perspective, it's like, is that really where I should be focusing my time?
Sure.
Do I remember, 2019 or 2018, what I was doing for a particular quarter? What was the focus? No, I don't, right? As important as Rackspace was to me.
Right.
I don't remember those specifics. Do I remember going to Six Flags every day during the summer of 2019?
Bet your ass.
Absolutely. Yep. Right. So it's about, what do I do with my time? And sometimes I get a little antsy. I'm like, maybe I should be working more. Maybe I should be pushing harder. It's like, wait, remember why you're doing this.
Yeah.
And it's like, so you can dictate where you spend your time. I take my kids to school every day. Obviously my wife helps when we need her to pick them up every day.
Mm-hmm.
I'm there pretty much for anything that they need. And that's nice.
Yeah.
And that's a choice that I made.
Absolutely.
Decision I made to have that control.
Yeah.
That's what matters to me.
But it's, I'm going to add and say it was the sacrifice that you also made.
Yeah.
Because I know that you busted your ass during that period and went through plenty of failure to get to the success, to be able to have the ability to spend your time on what you want to spend your time on.
It's also
versus what you have to spend your time on.
Yeah. It's also, first generation really to go to college. My mom went to college, me and all my siblings did. But back then it's like, just go to college, get a good job. That's all you got to do. And the system's designed for that, right? Just do what you're told. Come in, get a 40-hour job per week, get incremental raises, get some promotions, make you feel good, just enough to just keep going. Give you health care.
That's right.
Right. That's such a, we won't get into that, but the system is designed for you just to be a worker.
Rat race.
Exactly. And you know what? I succeeded in that environment and I actually loved it. When you pair that with a great culture, you could have a really long run.
Oh yeah.
But
a very long distraction.
But when you become a father or mother and things change, or you may not even need to be a father or mother, you just mature a little bit. And you're like, what's important to me? Like, do I really want to be spending all my time for an employer, as great as they may be, at the sacrifice of my time to do other things that I enjoy? Right.
And I think, who is it that speaks about it all the time? God, his name slips my mind, but it's essentially, it doesn't matter how old you are, go out and do whatever it was that your heart and your passions lead you to. Find a way to make money and know that you'll go through life without the regret. You can always go back to the 9 to 5 if that's where you want to go. Yeah. But at the end of the day, hey man, that's on you if you don't take that plunge, because there's still time.
Yeah. Yeah. So I, try to play golf once a week, do CrossFit, 4 to 6 times a week. And I did get a job, a W-2 job, last year for about a year with a great startup company back in, talent acquisition, really talent management. And I remember towards the end, because, things didn't work out like we had hoped for the company. So we had to do a lot of kind of layoffs. And I said, look, I'm out. I didn't sign up for this. I need to go back and focus on my real estate. But I remember towards the end, I was passing the quarry, which I play all the time. And I was like, man, I used to play like once or twice a week.
Yeah.
And what am I doing?
Mm-hmm.
Like, why am I doing this?
Right.
It was fun because it was that culture of Rackspace. I could tell it's a rocket ship
there you go.
If it was the correct model.
Whether you did it out of need or want, it was something that you saw in what they were pitching, that you saw what it could be.
Yeah. And honestly, that's probably why I ended up building a team, was taking that job.
Okay.
Because I was like, well, I don't want everything that I've put into real estate to go away. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. It was actually my best year I've ever had when I had that job as well.
Okay. That's awesome. That's awesome.
But we can kind of transition into that. So, I joined JB Goodwin, and that was my first, career after Rackspace. And everybody always asks, like, well, what are you going to do? Do you want to be a broker? Or do you want to lead a team? And I was like, nah, man. I just, like, even Aaron gave me like, I think your target for this year should be this. I kind of laughed. I was like, it sounds like a lot of work, man. I didn't. I believe in revenue streams. This is just one of them. And I don't, that sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah.
But then I was like, you know what? I think I could apply what I've done in the corporate world with just my philosophy, in general with life, to real estate and build a team.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not the type of team lead who's looking for like mass scale.
Right.
where I want to get as many agents as possible. It's very opportune for me.
Makes sense.
So do you come from a background of either running your own business or being in a company like Rackspace where you valued customer service and prioritizing the client, right?
Yeah.
Are you mature? Mid-career is great, right? Where you've already done a 10 to 20 year run somewhere. So you know how to run your day.
Right.
Because that's the number one thing.
Or it'll run
realtors
you for sure. Yeah.
Is, most realtors who do not find success, they struggle just running their day.
Yeah.
Right.
I have to agree with that.
Yeah.
And I think any sales position, and I want to talk about this here in a bit. I don't want to finish getting to that, but the accountability factor, the business planning, what setting out to do something, but how do you get there? What are the steps to take? What are the things that you need to do every day and then measure them? But we'll get into that.
Yeah. And so I had a conversation with Jason Stiles, who's on my team, early 2022. And he was talking about, hey, I'm thinking about different opportunities. Real estate's one of them. And I was like, you know what, man, I've been considering building a team. But I don't want to be hiring a bunch of agents and putting together, big old onboarding plan, which JB Goodwin, has a fantastic one. So I said, but look, let's go ahead and team up, see if it works, and go from there. And the whole goal with my team is to get them to producing 3-4 million as fast as possible.
Sure.
I'm not taking a huge cut of what they make.
Right.
If I'm bringing some leads, just like we do referral type situations with realtors everywhere.
Right.
It's a similar situation, but the goal for me isn't to take a big cut.
Right.
It's really that camaraderie, that culture that
to be a part of something
that I had at Rackspace, that coverage we have for each other. Is really the main motivator. Like, how can we help each other succeed? How can we help everybody be successful? And it really starts with the clients. Like, how can we provide the best experience possible for our clients?
Yeah.
And so that's the type of team I built. We're 4 total now, including myself. And 2 of them, Jason and Chris Collins are former Rackers. Yeah.
There you go.
Devin Cox is not a Racker, but just, tremendous gentleman. He was in the restaurant business, had owned his own businesses for years, bars, but couldn't be nicer. It's just cool guy. You can tell he really knows how to take care of his clients, and he's been a fantastic addition. And it's really helped us all get better at social media.
Bringing in new blood.
Yeah. Cool, fun ideas, things I may not have done in the beginning.
Getting out of the comfort zone.
Yeah. And so that's been fantastic. And so after I left the startup that I was with for a good part of 2022 and a little bit of 2023, really refocused on the Rich Realty Group and building out that team. And so we added Chris, and then we added Devin, and it's been fantastic. And they've found success. It's a tough market right now, but for them to be pipelining and closing deals and writing contracts and offers has been great. And it takes us back to doing some of the basics, which we'll get into as far as like planning and whatnot. But it's been a welcome addition. I'm glad I decided to do the team model versus just an individual agent.
That's awesome. Okay. So now that we've got your background, we've got a pretty good grasp of who you are, what you stand for, what you've been through, what you've succeeded at, and are continuing to apply to what you do. I want to get into what's going on with today. I think you're a valid expert to have just a little chat about what the hell's going on with our market, what we see in the future, and what loan officers, realtors, professionals in real estate could be focusing on that would set them on the right path. And the reason why I say that is there's just a lot of change that's happening in our industry. There's a lot of negativity that we're hearing. We're seeing a lot of folks jump out of our industry, which to me, it's not a bad thing. It's survival of the fittest, as it should be. And I mentioned it maybe on a previous episode, but a lot of us top producers, leaders in the industry are preaching and actually practicing going back to the basics. But unfortunately, a lot of the folks that had gotten into the business within the last, let's call it 4 years, never got an opportunity to create or discover what the hell the basics were, simply because it was like shooting fish in a barrel. Instead of having the 45 to an hour conversation with the customer. They're taking an application and running forward. Instead of sitting down with the customer and discussing their wants, needs, and then bringing them to reality, painting the picture, using your expertise, etc., they're just taking orders. That's what the last 4 years, in my opinion, were kind of like. So now that we are here, number one, what's going on with our real estate market? What do you think? Are you still heavy into real estate, or you've gotten out of that completely, or partial?
No. This is our biggest quarter I think I've ever had.
I love it.
Q4 of 2023.
Both the investment side and production side.
Production side.
Very good.
Like investments, it's autopilot, right?
There you go. Yes.
I'm not super focused on that. There's other things that we're looking at getting into from a revenue stream standpoint that's not related to real estate, but from a realtor standpoint, highest production I think I've ever had. I'll have to go back and look at the numbers.
That's awesome.
And this has been a very hard year.
Absolutely.
Very hard year. I think Q2 was the hardest for us personally. And I think just in general.
In general, yeah.
I was coming off of that other gig and, pipeline kind of shrank a little bit. So that was tough. But, we got through it. Q3 was huge and, Q4 is even bigger. But the market right now, I would say is a healthy balance, something that we've needed for a while. It's going back to, 2015 to 2019, where you go look at 10 houses and then 20 days later you come back, you're like, hey, I want to go look at this one again. And it's still there.
Yeah.
Right. Things are sitting longer.
Right.
That sense of urgency has gone away. If something gets under contract in 14 days, you're like, wow.
Yeah, it's true.
What happened?
That's true.
That's great because as you're well aware, people have low mortgage rates.
Right.
I forget the stat, but I think like 40% of homes don't even have a mortgage.
Correct.
So,
and then there's another out of that group. I believe it's upwards of 38% are sub 3% interest rates.
Yeah.
So that's a big chunk that leaves what, 30% left?
Yeah. So everybody who was just, trying to avoid FOMO, right?
Yeah.
Fear of missing out. Everyone was just jumping in and buying real estate.
Yeah.
People had no idea what they're doing, or had extra cash, at low interest rates, going for it. Cool. That's awesome. Right. I'm glad you did. But that's why it was so tough 2021, 2022, is because there was just so much competition and so few houses.
Right.
The inventory was super low because we were coming off of COVID. People were...
End of the world, got to get a house.
That or I don't want to list because I don't know what's going to happen. So the inventory was very tight. So it's normalized, which is good. And it comes back to the guidance I always give people is, well, why do you need to buy something? If you're talking about your residence, are you downsizing? Is your family growing? Are you relocating for a job? Those are all valid reasons to go buy a house.
That's right.
Right. And then if you have an existing home, you got to be a little more realistic on what your expectations are. And there's a couple of times in 2021, 2022, you'd list it and then you'd sell for 10% higher, 20% higher than any comps.
Absolutely.
Right. And it's just like, it didn't make a lot of sense. But,
no.
But that
happened. That was reality. Yep.
That's what it costs. Because that's what the market was paying.
That's right.
So now it's like, you don't want to overprice.
Yeah.
And there are some situations where the client's like, this is what I want to sell my house for. You provide the data.
Right.
Ultimately, it's their decision. And you just set that expectation. It's going to sit longer. Are you okay with that? Yes.
Right.
Great. Should we revisit in 2 weeks?
Setting proper expectations. Yes.
And if we're not getting the showings, should we potentially look at some sort of incentive to buy down the rate or lowering the price? Right. Those are strategies that every great agent is going to guide their client through.
I'm going to mention another, and it's something that JJ mentioned the last episode, which was a lot of agents are not attacking listing appointments the right way. And by that he meant, and he explained a little bit, is people are saying, well, I expect to get X amount for my home, when they should be looking at what the payment to a buyer more than likely is going to be, as opposed to what it was. So based on a 3% rate, this payment's going to be, let's call it $2,000. But in today's market, now that same payment is $3,000. So you're pulling a whole group of folks that could have purchased your home out of the market just simply because where we are with interest rates. So how does that look and feel to an onlooker at that price point. They're not looking at the purchase price. Of course, they'd buy it for that.
Yeah.
But the payment to them is now reflecting something that that they can't chew.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I think compounds that problem is, let's say me and you work together at Rackspace, known each other for a long time, and you bought a house in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful home, 3% interest rate.
Right.
And I'm like, well, I can't. Now it's my turn. And I'm like, well, the house I can afford doesn't look anything like yours.
Correct.
But we're the same.
Right.
Like, this doesn't compute. Like, what's happening, right? That's a big deal, I think.
I agree.
And I think people are like, the reality of what they can actually afford is causing them to be like, well, I'll just sit on the sidelines and just rent. And actually renting may be a better option because you can rent a similar house for a lot less than the payment would be.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're in a situation where you do have one of those situations where you need to go buy a house, but you don't think you're going to get what you want for your home, probably better off renting it. And you'll be able to basically market that home to somebody who's considering buying it.
Mm-hmm.
And your payment is going to be probably $1,500 less.
I'm going to challenge you on that just a tad. And I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying the other perspective is the one that I come from, which is if you're paying rent in any way, shape, or form, you're losing big. So in turn, I think we as professionals are scared to put people in their place. And what I mean by that, without being super, unorthodox, is just we need to give perspective to their situation. It's not miraculously going to get better to where now all of a sudden your budget or your appetite now fits your budget. We need to put things in perspective to the sense that, okay, you may have been able to qualify at $300,000 2 years ago, but now let's fast forward. You're now at $250,000. You're not all of a sudden going to be $300,000 because prices are not going to go low like that based on that same property. In addition, nobody's going to start putting their homes on the market all of a sudden. They don't want to lose their low rates. So come to terms with you're going to have to sacrifice for just some time to start doing what we all had to do, which is buy our first home, move up, move up, move up. And a lot of people, simply because of that period to where rates were very low, got a very large false reality.
Yeah.
And that reality is what's still driving us today, or buyers' habits today. And that needs to change. I think the more that we talk about it, the more people will come to the realization that you don't qualify for $300,000 anymore. It's now $250,000, and it's going to be $250,000 for quite some time. So either make more money, pay off more debt. And I can't even say save more money because that doesn't help you as much as it needs to. But sacrifice.
Yep. Yeah. I think it's a DTI issue.
Mm-hmm.
And, let me be clear. I'm always an advocate of buying real estate because you miss out on the appreciation.
Yes.
And that's huge.
Yeah.
One of my first rentals, there was times where we were losing money just because, I wouldn't always raise the rent because circumstances, right? And I was like, man, are we doing the right thing? And then when I sold it, walking away with $125,000 after taxes, it's like, oh, okay, it did absolutely make sense.
That's great, you raised a great point. And this is brief, but in the past, I would have first-time investors come to me and they'd want to qualify and purchase their first investment property. And they would look for months. And it's like, we're trying to find a property that cash flows $200, $300, $400 a month. And it's like, guys, do you really think your current situation, you work for a living, are going to take $300, $400 and it's going to change your life? The goal here, and you have to set them straight, the goal here is to have someone else pay something off for you and gain your equity over time.
Right? I always tell my W-2 investors is like, are you trying to cash flow or you want a little bit of a bill and somebody's supplementing your mortgage? Get it, man, because your appreciation is going to be through the roof in 5 to 7 years.
Absolutely, yeah.
So the point about challenging is it better to rent or buy? I don't know what the inverse of your hold period would be, but maybe your shopping period.
Sure.
So I think people need to sit down and prioritize what they're going to sacrifice on, because what's killing people right now is mass consumerization. That's what America's built on.
Yeah.
And so credit card payments are huge. Car payments, $1,800, $1,500. Are you crazy? Right.
And finance at maybe 150, 160% of the vehicle's value.
Yeah. So, if you can commit You want to look at everything in perspective. You want to give, and that's our job as realtors, give it all the data so that you can make an informed decision.
Yes.
And part of that equation is, well, we can go rent for a while, but you have to commit, just like when I was doing subprime loans, don't go open up all those credit cards again, right?
Right.
What are you going to do during the 6 to 12 months that you're renting that's going to set you up to go get the house that you want? Are you going to sell that car?
I love it.
And go get, a real nice, Jetta or Passat, which are super affordable.
Sure.
But may not be a BMW, may not be a Tahoe. Are you going to stop going out to eat every week? Are you going to stop traveling, for 6 to 12 months?
Sure.
To put you in a financial situation where you're going to look better on paper from your debt to income ratio.
That's
and
right.
Hopefully you're going to save some money, because instead of paying $5,000 a month on that house, you're paying $3,500 as renting. So what percentage of that $1,500 savings are you going to not touch?
Absolutely.
Right. And so I think it goes back to how long you're going to sit in that limbo situation in today's market. And that's a decision, because then we'll do that other equation. Well, it's going to appreciate 5 to 6%, and this is what's on the table.
That's right.
So what makes the most sense to you? Because you're buying an appreciating asset, and if you can stay in there for 3 to 5 years through this market, it's really going to be fine. But you're going to live in a house that doesn't look like your buddies.
And it allows them to create habits, better habits, new habits that should keep them on that same path.
And I should have started with this. The reason I was able to leave my W-2 job is because my wife and I focused on not having debt.
That's right. Yin and yang.
So
that's right.
It wouldn't have been possible if we weren't frugal, if we didn't live modest lifestyles.
Absolutely.
And so that's key.
Well, I mean, in today's, and I can't speak for all of them, but a lot of the feedback or pushback, objections that we hear when buying is kind of like what you said. I can afford this payment, but I don't want that payment because I've got other payments over here. Okay, well, you're telling me you want to put $20,000 down when you could put the 3.5, which is $7,000, what have you. Why not take that money and pay off some of this debt? You've already spent the money over here.
Yeah.
So take that $300 a month over here and move it to your mortgage, because you're going to get more bang out of your buck here than this continuing to just loom over your head.
Yeah. And if they can qualify debt to income wise with a higher payment, lower money out of pocket, I tell my clients, always consider yourself to be the bank.
Yes.
So if you're choosing between 10, 20% down or 3.5%, 4%, but you're able to hold on to an extra 50, 60 grand, like leave that in your bank, apply it to your principal every month. But then if something goes wrong, you still have access to that.
Absolutely.
Because if you did a rate buy down or something else, or you put a larger down payment, do you think you can go to Mark and say, hey, I put that extra 20 grand, but my AC broke. Can I get 12?
Do you have 20% equity? No, not yet. Okay, well, sounds like you got to call Rich to sell it.
So it's really just the perspective of looking at the whole pie of your monthly payments.
Yes.
And your assets and your cash, and how can you leverage it in creative ways if you qualify. A lot of people make a lot of money who can have these large payments, but it is intimidating to be faced with the $5,000 per month payment. But if you got 100 grand in the bank, that's going to last a while.
Absolutely. I like that. And I like that you brought that up. I mean, I think one practice that both lenders and realtors can do or employ right now is having a financial review with your previous customers to see how they're doing, set up a plan, whether that be we're purchasing a new home, we're fine where we're at, but there's a lot of wealth in real estate to be had that people are not tapping into at all. Yeah. And it's sad. It's a tragedy. We end up being the headlines of gloom and doom versus the driver that it is that we know, trust, and the reason why we've made it thus far. Now, you may be where you want to go. I'm not yet. And I'm going to continue to use real estate as that driver that pushes us to the next level, level up, like they call it.
Yeah. Real estate's a great way to fund other things.
Absolutely.
Pretty proven.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. And so, to kind of put a bow on this one and get back to some of the realtor basics, buy and sell when it makes the most sense for you, when you're prepared and you've really thought through all the different options.
Yeah.
Like that's the in this market, that's what's due, because it's going to be cyclical. It's going to go up and down. We're at the highest inventory we've seen since like 2011, which was the dip.
Right.
Right. But it doesn't feel that way. It's different.
Not at all. Yeah.
They're still appreciating. There's still affordable homes. San Antonio is unique because, my team operates from Austin down to Corpus. So I have interesting perspective.
Sure.
It's hard to buy a new construction home here if you have to be in a certain location because it's a circle. And so everything is pushed out.
Yeah.
Corpus, for example, you can get fantastic homes right in the middle of everything because it's just the way that the geography is. It's different. So new construction is a great opportunity for people who are still trying to get incentives, rate buy down. That's fantastic. But if you need pre-owned to be inside the loop, whichever loop it is, right. 46, 1604, 410.
It's true.
There's going to be some sacrifices you're going to have to make.
That makes perfect sense.
So then getting back to, what do realtors need to do? How do we plan?
Please.
What I always tell people is do real estate things. If you're,
I like that. That's so simple.
Yes. If you want to build a business, do real estate things. Yeah. And so what does that mean? Well, be careful. Don't get in that trap of doing busy work where you're doing stuff, you're in meetings.
That's right.
And they're not leading to some sort of revenue or pipelining activity.
Right.
Because then it's just self-indulgent.
Right. You chase your tail.
Correct.
And you don't even know it sometimes.
Yeah. So what can you do, right? So me coming out of Rackspace, my brand was Racker Richie, right? My email address was richie@rackspace.com, right?
Yeah.
Everybody knew me as Racker Richie, right? So how did I rebrand myself? So the first year or two, I was just hell-bent on becoming synonymous with real estate. So I wanted everybody in my sphere, when they thought of real estate, to think of me, right? And so very early on, Rich Realty, I got all my handles, the same, and, just went for it. And then I had a really good pipeline out of the gate, huge, relatively speaking, for a first-year agent. And I'd already closed. I think my first deal was like $600,000. It closed like a $400,000. I was already within like $1 million within probably 4 months.
That's awesome.
And I was like, here we go.
Yep.
And then COVID happened, and everything just went away. So I was like, what do I do? Might do real estate things. So I started doing Facebook ads. Yeah. For listings of my brokerage, but all I was getting were rental inquiries.
I see.
So I was like, and this is a good perspective share. A lot of agents don't like to do rentals because take a lot of time. Take just as much time to go show 10 rentals as it does to go show 10 purchases, right? 10 homes for sale. And usually the commission is a lot less.
Yeah.
So I don't look at it that way because that's what, those are the people who were reaching out to me, right? And if you remember what our mission is, my mission is to help people.
That's right.
Let me help you. And some people ask me, why are you working with that type of client? It's like, well, because they're my client and my mission is to help them. And I signed up for that, right? So I'm going to see it through to the finish. So in that period of time, I started working with a bunch of renters, made some mistakes, right? Because I'm a landlord. So I knew how to screen people, but I would just verbally do it. Right. So I'm showing a house and I'm like, all right, this is the one. Yep. We like it. I said, great. Let's go ahead and put in the application. And the husband goes, well, do you think they're going to be okay? I have a felony. And I was like, how did you get a felony between Tuesday when we spoke and Thursday when we're here at the house? And I told him that.
Right.
And he's like, oh, well, it wasn't my fault. It was a fight. And I said, I don't care, man. Like, we can ask, but that's going to be a problem because it clearly states
that's right.
No felonies.
Yep.
Right. If I had known that, I can then do a different type of search to target different type of properties and have conversations up front. So that way the experience is great for them. When we go look at houses, we know that they can get them.
Yeah.
So that happened to me. And I said, you know what? I'm going to change this. So I created a form, Google form, that had all the questions I asked over the phone, but I won't show a rental until they fill that out. And it says on there, this isn't an application. This is my pre-screening form to make sure I can find the right properties for you. What if they got aggressive breed dogs, right? It's a different type of search.
Yep.
So that one additional step.
This wouldn't have had to have been Michael Vick, was it?
No.
If the shoe fits.
So I that one step, what it's showing me is I'm willing to put in that extra bit of work up front. So I'm willing to put in the work for you because we both respect each other, right? We're going to go find a house for you now. So I did that. And man, I probably made $6,000 to $7,000 that first year in just rentals. And if anybody knows how much you get paid on rentals in this market, that's a lot of rentals.
Absolutely.
And there's lots of great successful realtors in our market who've built their careers and businesses off of rentals.
Yes.
So I actually have a rental that I'm putting live tomorrow.
I like it. I really like that.
And so the perspective I have on rentals, and I have sold, I should have done the count before I got in here. I just closed on one Monday to 2020, got them in a rental, bad credit, closed on their first home.
Love it.
Right?
Yes. And I hoped that's where you were getting at with this, because this is a discussion in itself.
I've probably done, I would say 10 or 11 converts over the past 4 years from rental to home buyer, first-time home buyer, which is so rewarding, right? You're there all the time.
So one practice that I used to utilize for years, and this was prior to, and matter of fact, it's time to bring it back, is I would give my real estate professional, my preferred agents, the ones that wanted to work with me, I wanted to work with them, I would give them a paper form application. So when they were showing their rentals to folks, chances are the qualifications are very close to buy. Matter of fact, if you have a felon, you may not be able to rent, but you sure shit can buy.
Yeah.
Weird, huh? So while they're on those appointments, I tell them, hey, get that customer's information, strike the conversation if you would, and let them know that you'll get this over to your lender. Your lender will reach out to them to go over their options. So they'll be able to get the credit check knocked out, and they'll also be able to have two options on the table: continue to rent, or it's time to buy. But go ahead.
One of the first rental clients I had, we ended up not finding a rental, got them a house, because they had two aggressive breed dogs. They had a Rottweiler and they had a Doberman.
There you go.
I couldn't find anything. I said, hey, you guys make pretty good money.
Insurance nightmare.
How much down payment do you have? They had it. The mom called me and was like, don't talk to them about that. They're not ready. They're 25, 26 years old, had kids. I'm like, okay, mom, right. Respectful.
Right.
Yes, ma'am. You guys have a conversation.
Ma'am, when did you buy your first home? I was 48.
Yeah.
Okay, well.
So they called me back in like a week, like, all right, we want to go look for houses. All right. So cool. Found them a house, got them in. Fantastic. Fast forward a year later, I sold the mom a house.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yes.
But my perspective on rental clients is, one, you get to help somebody find a home. And I'm a landlord. I think rentals are fantastic. Mm-hmm. I don't like people who speak negatively about renters in a neighborhood.
Yeah.
I don't have time for that. Like, I think they're paying taxes just as much as you are. It's calculated in that rent.
That's right.
And I respect renters, and we've all been renters, and it's part of the journey.
That's right.
So I help people. Then realtors will go spend 20, 30% of their commission on a referral lead, right? That could be a lot of money.
Absolutely.
So I don't look at wasting time. I don't look at renters and rental clients as a waste of time. They're paying me for the lead. Right. They're giving me whatever that commission is up front as a lead. So they're paying me to eventually buy a house. And going back to doing real estate things, what's better than showing houses?
That's right.
Practice
your walkthroughs, practice your presentation.
That's how you build that relationship. Right. That's how you build that rapport. And, I will never say I'm better than any other realtor, right? I'm really good against my own kind of measurements, but choosing your realtor is a relationship, and it's very personal.
That's right.
So who may be great for one client may not be great, with me. And so I never look at it that way. So I'm able to go do real estate things, show them houses, hear about their dreams and their goals, and then kind of guide them, right? That's kind of the benefit of being mid-career, having some previous success, being a landlord, really understanding real estate, is they start to tell me what they want to do, and then I can kind of help guide them.
And I think the biggest point here is you listen.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of agents, not a lot of people in general miss these signs, they're giving it to you on a platter, and you go, well, I don't know what to do or how to. They just told you. Mm-hmm. You didn't listen.
Yep. Yeah. And so that's been one of the best things that I've ever done. I still work rentals today. I still help people find rental homes. I do a lot of lease listings, which is great. But my team, we all embrace that philosophy because it makes sense. And then it goes back into planning, because then what are the activities? What are you doing on a day-to-day basis? So what we do is we start doing the next year planning in, I think we did it in September, right? Okay. So we try to target the end of Q3, beginning of Q4 to really start thinking about 2024, because our philosophy there is, if we focus on the near term, we're going to chop our feet off, right?
It's already passed.
we're going to miss opportunities because we're so focused on just trying to crunch a number to hit an arbitrary goal by the end of the year.
Yeah.
So I said, let's go plan for the end of 2024. And then along the way, we're going to pick up stuff that will close this year.
I like it.
Right. So then we start thinking about, all right, what do we got to do? What are our different lead streams? Open houses, marketing to your sphere, rentals, social media, what else? Or, it could be anything that you want, right? And then, okay, well, if those are my sources, what activities do I need to do? How many open houses do I need to do, right? If the conversion rate, and you can either use numbers that you've done personally or talk to other realtors,
right?
How many open houses do you have to host before you close one?
That's right.
Well, then extrapolate that over a year and then reverse engineer it into your schedule. So am I doing 1 a month? Am I doing 4 a month, right? And that goes to everything. Then you can get it into appointments per day, contacts per week, whatever makes sense. But then it goes back to what we said earlier. You got to know how to manage your day.
Yes, sir.
Plan your work and work your plan.
I like
so
that.
If it says, I need to contact 15 people this week, and you define up front what contacts are. Is it a text? Is it a phone call? Is it an email? Is it an engagement on social media?
Is it just an attempt, or you don't count it until you actually get somebody on the phone? Absolutely.
Correct.
I love
define
this.
those things up front. And people think it's silly to, invite people to coffee or lunch, but that's how you humanize, right?
Absolutely.
In a very digital world, that's how you bring back.
You've got to keep this going.
Yeah, even if it's over Zoom. During the pandemic, we learned how to have happy hours and coffees and lunches
Same.
over Zoom. So embrace it. And those tactics work really well with your database.
Yes.
So, or your sphere of influences, other people call it. So people who already know you. And they may not know that you're in real estate. So it's an opportunity, right? And we're never in your face about, hey, Mark, I'm in real estate. I'd love to list your house when the opportunity is ready. That's
not how you should lead any sales call, in my opinion, unless they called you.
It's very authentic, genuine. Like, go reach out to somebody you haven't talked to in a while.
Right.
See how they're doing. See how you can help them in any way outside of real estate. Then they're going to bring up, what are you into now? Well, I just started a new career. I'm doing real estate. Oh, interesting. Okay. Tell me more about that, right? They're going to, if they already know you and genuinely like you, they're going to be interested in learning about what you do. And then that's part of planting that initial seed to eventually become synonymous with real estate to your sphere.
That's correct.
And, when people are like, well, what do I got to do? I don't have any leads. Like, again, focus on the basics, focus on people, do real estate things, and build your business from there.
I like it. And that is a lot of working on your business instead of in your business. And essentially, you've got to develop the plan to be able to work on in your business. But if you don't ever take a bird's eye view to determine, okay, number one, what are my goals? Number two, what activities do I need to do? You can call them critical success factors. I call them needle moving activities. Yep. Some people call them revenue generating activities, whatever it takes. Those are the things that you have to do in order to get to your goal. Then you've got to determine, how often do I need to do them? Yep. What is the frequency? In addition, it's got to be measurable. If they're not measurable, how do you go back after the year of working in your business, how do you know what to adjust? Yep. Because all the while, if it didn't work, or even if it did work, let's say it did work, you then think that that's the ticket, when in actuality, it was something else. So you totally missed the mark, and now you don't know what to adjust when things change. Whereas in today's market, things have changed. What do? We go back to our basics and we adjust our figures of activities and how frequent we do those activities because we know they work.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think it's super important for anybody in business, anybody in sales, but more so real estate and mortgage right now, to get to the basics in regards to your plan. And it's not enough to just put the goals. You've got to map it out. Yep. You've got to be able to hold yourself accountable, and you've got to put it somewhere where you can see it pretty often. And I'm even going to go as far as to say, find an accountability partner, someone that maybe you guys did your business planning together.
We did.
And maybe you shared them together, and now you're going to hold each other accountable. Hey, how are you doing? Are you tracking? Are you trending for hitting the goal that you had? If a full year is too much, that's a lot for somebody to ask to plan out. Do it quarterly. There's nothing wrong with you breaking it up into 4 quarters and going, okay, by the end of this quarter, this is where I need to be. It can either be a monetary goal, it can be a production goal, but there needs to be a goal. I also tell people to bring personal goals to the table because you can't lose sight of why you're doing it in the first place, or else it becomes moot and you're a robot. I don't like that, but yeah.
Yeah, no, it's great. Like we plan for the year, but then we break it down all the way to the day. Right?
Like
so we understand by quarter how many transactions do we need to have. Then we go by week. How many appointments do we need to have? Contacts, all that stuff to get it down to the day.
Yeah,
and so it helps us to measure, like you said, and it helps us to be consistent in our activities.
I love it.
And then the great thing about being a team, you don't have to be a team to do this. Accountability partners works, but we meet every week. And part of that is to go over things that are going on, but it's also to build content.
Yeah.
And what's also nice about having a team is I don't have to build content myself every single day, every single week, right? Because we share each other's, right? And we have similar message. And it's just super helpful for us to be accountable to each other, to be consistent with the activities that we do, and to plan together, for the year.
I love that. And I think that every team leader, branch manager, leader should be, if you're not already, utilizing some of this philosophy. I mean, if you've never done it before, sit down, take the time to do something like this, because these things are what gets a producer to a leader to somebody that can then teach and coach this concept and duplicate it. It should be duplicatable. A lot of people think, oh my God, what you're doing, it's not possible to redo. Why not? It's the basics. Now, the personality side, the others, hey, to each their own. But here's the blueprint. Here's the basics. JC, how long have we been going? All right. Wow. Okay, so let's wrap this up here shortly. But before we do, I do want to let everybody know that I utilize a simple business plan. And the reason why I utilize a simple business plan itself is just in the words. It's simple. I'm not trying to overthink what my goals are. I'm not trying to overthink what it takes to get there. It's hard enough to do the things that it takes to get there and do them consistently. I also hold classes for realtors, for lenders at this time of the year. You should start seeing invites for that or events for that for completing your simple business plan for 2024. That being the case, Rich, I want to ask, what would you leave as the final thought here? This has been awesome. You are a treasure trove of information, and I love talking to you about this because you can see your passion. You can also see the accomplishments that you've made weren't taken for granted. It's one of those things that I can tell you're super appreciative of where you are and what it took to get there. I know it wasn't easy. I know because I'm a participant in that. This stuff is not easy. We make it look easy. And most people only see the final outcome and then wonder, well, how do they do that? We're telling you guys, we're literally telling you right now how we get here. All the in-between, all the hard work, all of the trials and tribulations, that's on you, whether you want to continue moving forward or not. We chose to continue and will choose to continue. So Rich, if you could, anything that you would leave realtors, lenders, sales folks, customers, buyers, sellers with that they can take to the bank in cash, man?
So for me, it's starts with the mission to help people. Really listen and focus on the outcomes your clients are trying to achieve.
Yeah.
And let that be your guiding light.
Then
you bring your expertise in. So I'm not somebody who says, I'm going to sell your house for this much over list price in this many days because everything's circumstantial.
That's right.
And so listen to what they're trying to accomplish and leverage your expertise and your experience to get them there.
I like that.
And be communicative along the way. Like that's our guiding principle for everything that we do. It's our client.
That's right.
First. And then everything we build around that is designed to amplify that experience for our clients and achieve the outcomes that they want. But then we also apply it internally. It's about people.
Yeah.
What do our fellow realtors in the brokerage, how can we help each other, even if they're not on my team?
Right.
That's what's great about JB Goodwin. We have a culture of helping people. But then in my team, where are they struggling? Make myself available to them to to help them be consistent and to be planful. And so, my takeaway is just focus on helping people, listen, and lead with logic, expertise, and experience.
I love that. Rich, there is an obvious reason as to why you are where you are today. And I hope and pray that you continue to be a leader, a beacon for those around you. I don't think that anything that you've built thus far has been built on straws. It's a very strong foundation, and you're building upon it. You and your wife got a good thing going on. I'm happy to be a part of that, and looking forward to the future, because a lot of people are talking doom and gloom, and I'm like, go. Please, it leaves more for us. So that being the case, I want to thank you again for joining me and taking an hour or so to share all of the knowledge that you have thus far. And for those of you out there listening, if you got anything out of this discussion, please make sure to like, subscribe, share this. You never know who could be in need of this information, and timing is everything. I've had many times where it's like, man, I needed to hear that right now. You would be surprised, and it's a good feeling being the person to share that with somebody that is the providing the answer to the issues that they're having, or maybe conundrum that they're going through, because we're all going through something in our own lives that we may think that it's, hey, I could never get out of this. Trust me. We've all been there, and we're still standing. So again, thanks for tuning in. We will catch you on the next one.